It is Thursday, January 14th, 2021. I'm Pastor Thor Ramsey with Center Church. This is Gospel for Five, where we take 5 minutes out of our day and focus on the gospel because Jesus is the gospel. We've been going through the book of Galatians. We've been talking about what every Christian experiences, what every Christian who's been truly born again, born of the Spirit of God, so we now have God's Spirit residing within our souls, and we find this battle in the Christian life, this daily battle between the desires of our flesh, which I have to emphasize again, are not always evil. Our desires in and of themselves are not evil. It's not evil to desire to eat. It's not evil to desire sexual fulfillment. It's not evil to desire pleasure. These things aren't evil in and of themselves. But when we live for those things and make those the gratification of the flesh, that's what becomes evil. And that's what we were living for before we knew Christ. We were just living for the fulfillment of our fleshly gratification, basically. That's called hedonism. Right? We're basically hedonistic, basically living for the gratification of our fleshly desires. But then we came to know Christ, and now we're born again, and God's Spirit is moving us to becoming more like Christ, to obeying God, and now we find often in our daily lives a battle between doing the will of God and fulfilling a desire of the flesh over and above what is needed often, right? That's what gluttony is. It's not wrong to enjoy rich and great foods, but gluttony is a sin then, right? It's that same type of thing. But if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are evident. So he gives us the works of the flesh. So if your life is defined by living for these things, generally it means you're not being led by the Spirit. And if you're not led by the Spirit, you're not a Christian, right? You can't be a Christian and not be led by the Spirit. Christians are led by the Spirit. Why? Because you have the Spirit of God within you. You can't help being led by the Spirit. So that's the idea. Now, the works of the flesh are evident. Sexual immorality, is that to say that Christians can engage in these things? Clearly they can, right? And it's a defeat when we do. It really shows that we're not walking by the Spirit, but we're gratifying the desires of the flesh. So sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. And then he says something very serious. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. So if In other words, if these things define your life, if they define what you're living for, if they define your general daily life, you're not a Christian. He said you cannot be a Christian and have this as the trajectory of your life. So let's go through this list again. Sexual immorality. You can't live a sexually immoral life and be headed for the kingdom of God. Becomes very problematic when we hear of Christian heroes. I haven't looked into it that much, but I've heard reports that Ravi Zacharias had some sexual immorality in his life during his ministry. So now I haven't looked into it. I didn't look if, how consistent was it? Was he struggling with it and filling it with here? I don't know. I didn't look into it that much. I appreciated Ravi Zacharias. I didn't read his books that often or listen to him very often. So hearing that didn't impact as much. Even if you were like someone who really followed his ministry and read all his books and went to conferences and heard him speak and were really impacted by him, then it would really hit you in a different way, right? But that's the point here is these things cannot be a consistent part of the Christian's life. Can a Christian fall into these things? Yes. Can they be a consistent part of a Christian's life? No. What happens if they're a consistent part of your life? Well, you're clearly what we call a false believer. If you're claiming to be a Christian and these things are defining your life, then you are a false believer. Hate to end on that note today, but we'll have to come back tomorrow. So let's find out if you're a Christian tomorrow. All right? What has God said to you today? And what are you